Hello, my name is Jim McGillivray and this is the Pipe Box, your source for all things piping. If you find this video useful, please give it a like and please subscribe to this YouTube channel to be informed of more videos just like this. We're going to do a tune today and you can print the music out for this tune by going back to the description of this video on my YouTube channel. You will find a link to a PDF there. Today I would like to do with you one of my favorite 2/4 competition marches, John MacDonald of Glencoe. Who John MacDonald of Glencoe was, I do not know. I suspect there were probably many of them over the years. I do know that the tune was written by Willie Lawrie, one of our greatest composers. Willie Lawrie had a short life. He was born in 1881 and he died in 1916 after becoming ill in the trenches at the Somme during World War I. His output of compositions is quite remarkable. The Battle of the Somme, Captain Carswell, Inverary Castle, the Pap of Glencoe. But at the top of that list for me is John MacDonald of Glencoe. This is a challenging tune. I wouldn't say it's a tricky tune, but it's dense with technique and has lots of subtlety of expression. In terms of level of difficulty, I would say it is upper intermediate into advanced. It's hedging on being a difficult tune. Okay, let's start by having a quick look at the whole score. This annotated score is spread across 2 pages. This is the first page. This shows the first 3 parts. You'll be able to see lots of doublings, burls, grips, and de-throws. I won't spend much time today talking about technique, except how it fits into the music. A tune like this is mastered in 2 ways. First, you learn the notes and musical expression of the tune. Meanwhile, you're working on your technique outside of the tune so that you can play with technique that is close to automatic. You play better music by improving your technique. Today though, we will talk mostly about music. You'll see lots of circled notes here. You may notice that all of the notes circled in red are 1/8 notes. All of the notes circled in purple are 32nd notes. We'll talk about the importance of these notes as you try to produce music from this tune. That's what the tune looks like. Let's hear what it sounds like. Here is Willie Lawrie's John MacDonald of Glencoe played on a Dager electronic chanter. Starting with the first part, the first thing I'd like to discuss is the ending. This ending separates those who can play bottom hand doublings from those who can't. To play this ending well, you need to be able to play bottom hand doublings off of very short notes, off of 30-second notes, and that takes a certain amount of skill. Notice how pointed it is. We point the note after the doubling and then we just bounce off the lower notes. Quite a lovely ending in that way. You will also notice at the start of the ending, I have circled an eighth note. And in the last bar, I've circled another eighth note. Those are eighth notes I would like you to make sure you push out. The eighth note in the last bar, that B is not longer than the low A. It's the same length as the low A. I have circled it because in my experience, pipers tend to play that doubling and then jump down to the low A. So hold the quarter notes circled. So always pay great attention to the ending in a tune. And why? Because you're going to play it 8 times. So as you practice the tune, be careful that the ending doesn't become routine and a little boring for you and you start to put some bad habits into it. Always pay good attention to your endings. You're going to play them a lot. Okay, let's have a quick look at the whole first line of the first part. As I mentioned earlier, the notes circled in red are eighth notes. They're the longest notes in the tune. We want to make sure that we hold them all out. I've circled almost all of them because pipers tend to slough over some of these. The notes in the purple boxes are 30-second notes that are located on a beat or on an offbeat. I've highlighted them because pipers tend to either crush them or hit them early or both. We're going to look at some of these in detail and talk about how we hit those exactly on the beat. Let's look at the very first bar, right after the leading notes. The very first note is a short C, and it's on the beat. That is why it has a purple box around it. Dia hoki dumbro ipatoti. The reason that I have put a box around it is that pipers tend to go for the long note and tend to put the short note ahead of the beat and the long note on the beat. Something like this. I want you to wait for that C. Hold the first E in the lead-in notes and wait for the first C. Then you're going to hold the next dotted 30-second note. It's the first long note in the part, and in 2/4 marches, you always hold the first long note in the part. Next, after that, I have circled a low A eighth note. I've mentioned that all the eighth notes are going to be as long as you can make them. I want this one long, particularly because it's followed by a burl, and it's a very dramatic bar. So really wait for that burl. The G grace note in your burl is on the beat. Bar 2. Now, we have 2 30 seconds with purple boxes around them. The first one that starts the bar is on the beat. The second one is on the offbeat. Hudum huddy hum. Hudum huddy dum, hudum huddy hum. So again, we're guarding against playing these short beat and offbeat notes early. So the first 2 bars. See how I held the low A before I hit the short C going up? In the middle of bar 2, we see an F that is circled in red. It's an 8th note, and we're going to hold it, not just because it's an 8th note, but because it's the end of the phrase. And whenever we end a phrase, especially if it's on an 8th note, we draw that 8th note out as long as we can. Hey, huddy, hum, brody, hakam, badida, hekadody, brody, hakam, bobada, huppadaddy. Okay, so first 2 bars again. Bar 3, we see 2 circled 8th notes. They both have doublings on them. That is why I've circled them. They're also the first 8th note in a pair, and we're going to really make sure that we push those 2 8th notes out. Don't rush off them because they have difficult technique around them. I want you to almost think of the circled notes as being longer. In bar 4, the very first B has a purple box around it. We're going to play it on the beat. So when your G finger, grace note finger, hits the chanter, your foot hits the floor. And then to end the line, we have a red circled 8th note again. Why? Because again, it's the end of the phrase. Just have the tiniest little comma between that D 8th note and the lead-in notes to the next line. The next phrase in line 2 is exactly the same. I have the same note circled. And then we have our ending with our bouncy doublings. So that's the first part. Let's hear it played on a practice chanter. Most of what we're going to talk about in the second part concerns 8th notes and matching up 8th notes into little, we'll call them tone poems. Let's look at bars 1 and 2. You'll see that I've circled the first E 8th note, a high A 8th note, and then in bar 2 the E and the C 8th notes. Those notes we're going to make sure we really push out, and we're going to try to, in our musical mind, connect those notes together. Ho-ba-dee, um-ba-dee, um-ba-dee, hum-bo-dee. Ho-ba-dee, um-ba-dee, ba-dee, hum-bo-dee. That's what we're trying to do in phrase 1. Phrase 2, again, starts with a D 8th note. It's the first long note in the phrase, so it's going to get its due. Remember as well, going back just a little bit, the bar before, the phrase ends on the C that is circled. The E after is a lead-in note to the second phrase. So hold the long D to start the phrase. Then we're going to see 2 30-second notes that are on the beat. And we want them to be on the beat. Those are takums, as you deduced, I'm sure. The second thing we want to be careful of with takums is that we don't crush them. We need those takums to speak. We need them to be audible. We need them to pop. So they need to be open, and I need to be able to hear what note you're hitting. So wait for them. And that's the end of the phrase. Line 2, the first phrase, is the same as line 1, and of course then we have our ending. Now we have our second ending, and the first phrase in the second ending, again, is a little parade of eighth notes that line up beautifully. We're going to push them all out. Dee, hobadoi, hobadum, hobadi. Okay, nice and measured and musical. And then our ending. Let's hear the whole second part played in the practice tenor. The third part is the most difficult part in the tune, and the second phrase is the most challenging phrase in the tune. The biggest challenge is being able to play D grace notes on short Cs and be able to hold the note before them. So if we look at phrase 1, again we're going to hold the circled eighth note because it's the first note in the phrase and because it's an eighth note. Then we hit a low A with an E on it. We're going to hit several of these low A's as we go through this part, and they will have a short C with a D grace note on it afterwards. I want you to make sure that you hold these low A's. They're not very long, but make sure you point them as much as you can. I haven't marked them in the music here, but there's a string of them in bar 1, on bar 3, and all the way through the part. So in the first bar, just the first half bar, I'm going to make sure I sit on that low A, and the C after it's going to be very short. We get to bar 2, and we have 2 circled eighth notes, and you're going to match these up in your musical brain again. 2 groups of 3 that mirror each other. Make sure you hold both eighth notes. Make sure the takum at the end of bar 2 again is open and audible. The next phrase, bar 3 and 4. This is the most challenging part, and as I mentioned, we're going to hit 2 low A's that we want to make sure we hold a little bit, even though they're followed by short C's with D grace notes on them. So I'll exaggerate it. have to be able to manage the technique in that phrase. First thing, if you're learning the tune, make sure you're getting all the grace notes right. It's grace noted in a way that works for your fingers. Let's look at bar 4. And we have an 8th note circled to start it and another short 32nd note afterwards. You need to hold the low G. I was asking you to hold the low A's earlier. You need to hold the low G here. And line 2 is the same as line 1 except for the ending, which we have done. Let's hear the third part played on the practice channel. In the fourth part, I'd like you to really focus on the long 8th notes in phrases 1 and 3. Again, it's one of our little tone poems where we have 4 8th notes that connect up if you play it just right. Just push out the first note. Like that. Very similar to what we saw in the second part. Phrase 2 we have seen before. With your nice open tocums. Then we hit phrase 1 again. And then the ending. Then we have a second ending. In bar 1 of the second ending we have a bit of a tricky D grace note here. I want you to make sure you hold the D there and also the B, because the B is followed by a short C with a D grace note on it. Don't rush off the B because of that. And then in bar 2 in the second ending we have one little tricky element, which is a D grace note on a short C after a short note. Resist the temptation to clip that. Try not to do this. And don't make it too round. Hold the E, but then open out the C. Make sure the C is on the offbeat. D, dee, dee. Keep it open and keep it audible. Let's hear the fourth part on the practice channel. As I mentioned at the outset, this is not an easy tune. Your musical success in this tune will be determined very much by your ability to play complex pieces of technique like doublings and grips and burls after short notes. I found when I was first learning tunes like this that it helped me immeasurably to do exercise work outside of the tune. That helped me produce rhythmic finger work, my technical tutor with 144 exercises in it, and I played not 144 all at once, but I had my selection of exercises that I played regularly 3 or 4 times a week for 40 minutes a session on the practice channel, and what that did for my hands and my ability to express the 2/4 marches the way I wanted to was quite amazing. So if you want to tackle a tune like John MacDonald of Glencoe, be prepared to work on your technique as a sort of a side project. In terms of tempo, the demonstration recording at the start of this video was about 68 beats per minute. These days, I'm finding ideal tempo for competition soloists is between 66 and 72 beats per minute. Pipe bands will play a little bit quicker than that. If you're a lower grade competitor, your tempo will likely be below that, and as I've often said, you're going to play the tune slowly enough that you can play it technically really well. Don't play a tempo that's above your technical capabilities. More than once in these videos, I've expressed the importance of the metronome in helping you play on the beat. I like to sing to the metronome, and it really shows me exactly where every note goes in relation to the beat. So if I were to play John MacDonald of Glencoe at 68 beats per minute, when I sing to the metronome, I double time that. So it's going to be at 136 beats per minute, and I'm going to listen to the metronome very carefully as I sing to it. Dick-a-da-dee-dum-bro-dee, hakam-ba-dee-da, hick-a-do-dee, hum-bee, hakam-ba-ba-dee, hick-a-da-dee-hum-bro, hee, hakam-ba-dee, hee, hick-a-do-lick-a-dum-ba-dick-a-dee-dum-bro. As you can hear, it shows me exactly where each short notes falls with relation to the beat, and that's absolutely crucial. That's it for John MacDonald of Glencoe. Be patient. Tunes like this are like a long-term project, but once you get them up and running, they are a very rewarding project. That's it for Willie Lawrie's John MacDonald of Glencoe. I hope you enjoyed it. From me, Jim McGillivray at the Pipe Box, good piping.